I had imagined this day for years. The moment I would stride across the stage, cap and gown perfectly in place, and accept the diploma that represented 5 years of relentless effort. The moment my name would echo through the auditorium and I'd glance out to see my husband, my children, my parents, smiling, cheering, proud. Instead, when I stepped up to the stage that afternoon, all I could see were 5 glaringly empty seats in the audience. 5 seats I had reserved weeks in advance for the people who should have been my biggest supporters. They sat untouched, little white reserved signs taped to their backs, waiting for faces that never appeared. The applause for my name felt strangely hollow, blending in with the polite claps given to every other graduate. There was no wave from my husband, no overexcited whistle from my son, no proud tears from my mother, just strangers' faces in the crowd, their joy meant for someone else. I clutched the diploma case as if it were a lifeline, willing myself not to break down in front of hundreds of people. My classmates beamed as they stepped off the stage, their families shouting congratulations, waving flowers and balloons. I walked back to my seat in silence, each step heavier than the last. It wasn't just the absence that hurt, it was what it meant. The empty seats weren't a scheduling mishap or a last-minute emergency. They were a choice made by every person I loved most to be somewhere else on one of the most important days of my life. When the ceremony ended, the graduates spilled outside into the sunshine, greeted by hugs, cameras, and celebrations. I stood on the edges, diploma in hand, forcing a tight smile when classmates invited me into their family photos. My phone buzzed in my bag, and for a fleeting second, hope flared. Maybe they were running late. Maybe they'd been caught in traffic. Maybe, just maybe, they'd show up now. But when I pulled it out, the screen didn't hold a "we're here" or a "so proud of you" message. Instead, it was a single notification, an urgent message from Nathan. My heart sank, the flicker of hope extinguished. Whatever he had to say, I already knew it wouldn't be about rushing to the campus with flowers in hand. I stood frozen, surrounded by the sounds of other people's joy, staring at my phone like it might rewrite the day if I stared long enough. In that moment, the truth settled over me with a cold, heavy weight. This milestone I had fought so hard to reach, this day I had counted down to for years, was going to be remembered not for the degree in my hands, but for the people who weren't there to see me earn it. 5 years earlier, when I first signed up for my master's program, I knew it wouldn't be easy. What I didn't realize was just how much it would take from me, and from my family. By day, I was a financial analyst at Franklin Financial Services, working long hours under constant deadlines. By night, I became a student again, swapping business reports for textbooks, client calls for lectures, and evenings with my family for a quiet corner in a classroom. My mornings started before the sun. At 5:30 a.m., I'd drag myself out of bed to make breakfast, pack lunches, and make sure Ethan and Sophia were up and ready for school. By 7:30, I was out the door and heading into a full workday that rarely ended before 5:00 p.m. 3 nights a week, I'd skip the comfort of home entirely, heading straight from the office to campus for evening classes that stretched until 9:00 p.m. I'd come home exhausted. The kids already in pajamas, dishes piled in the sink, and a mountain of homework, both theirs and mine, still waiting. Weekends, for most families, meant soccer games, birthday parties, and movie nights. For me, they became study marathons. I'd lock myself in our home office with a stack of readings and assignments while Nathan took the kids out. Sometimes I overheard Ethan complain to his father, "Mom's always studying. She never has time for us anymore." Those words stung more than I could admit, but I told myself it was temporary. Every time I felt the pull of guilt, I reminded myself why I was doing this. For a better career, for financial stability, for the example I'd set for my children. I pictured the family vacation we'd finally take. Maybe Disney World, maybe somewhere tropical, once I had the promotion that my master's would unlock. My boss had made it clear. No matter how good I was at my job, no matter how many clients I retained, advancement required more than a bachelor's degree. I'd seen younger, less experienced colleagues leapfrog ahead simply because they had that extra line on their resumes. The third time I was passed over for a senior position, I decided I'd had enough. The program I chose was designed for working professionals, 3 courses a semester, all in the evenings. It would take longer, but it was the only way to make it work. In the beginning, Nathan was supportive. He'd tell me how proud he was, encourage me when I was stressed, even take over dinner duty some nights. But as the months turned into years, that support wore thin. "How much longer is this going to take?" he'd ask, frustration creeping into his voice. "The kids barely see you anymore." I'd always answer the same way. "Just 2 more years. Then, just 1 more year. Then, just a few more months." But the truth was, every semester felt like a small mountain to climb. I learned to live in a constant state of exhaustion, powering through late nights, fighting to stay focused when my eyes blur and over flashcards at midnight, pushing myself through exams after 10-hour workdays. And yet, despite the strain, there were moments of pride. When I aced a particularly brutal finance exam, when I managed to deliver a major report at work while keeping up with assignments, when Sophia came home with an essay about the hardest working person I know and wrote about me. Still, it wasn't just my kids who noticed my absence. My parents, living 2 states away, already had a long history of favoring my brother, Derek, over me. He was the golden child, successful real estate career, bachelor lifestyle, waterfront home. They attended every one of his events and never hesitated to rearrange plans for him. For me, there were always excuses. Growing up, they never missed his football games, but often skipped my academic competitions. As adults, they'd happily help him with home projects, but always seemed too busy when I needed childcare for exams. When I once confronted my mother about it, she shrugged and said, "Your brother is just more fun to be around. You're always so serious." I tried not to dwell on it. This degree was for me, I told myself, not for them, not for their approval. Still, deep down, I hoped that walking across that graduation stage would finally make them see me differently. I hoped my children would see me differently too, that they'd understand the value of sacrifice, that they'd look back one day and remember how their mother worked, studied, and pushed forward against the odds. That vision of them in the audience, Ethan clapping awkwardly but smiling, Sophia bouncing in her seat, Nathan taking photos, my parents dabbing at their eyes, kept me going through the hardest nights. And as the years passed, I started to believe it might actually happen. The finish line was in sight, and for all the strain, I thought we'd made it through together. I thought my famous merely understood what this degree meant, not just to me, but to all of us. I didn't know then how wrong I was. If you want to understand why my parents' absence at my graduation hurt so deeply, you have to understand Derek. Derek is my older brother by 3 years. From the time we were kids, it was clear he could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. He had the easy charm, the confident smile, and the kind of social magnetism that drew people to him. He was also the athlete, star quarterback in high school, the one who got the loudest cheers and the biggest turnout for every game. Meanwhile, I was the one with my nose in a book, racking up academic awards that got polite claps and half-hearted good jobs from the stands. While Derek was whisked off for celebratory pizza after a win, my debate team victories were followed by a quick, "That's nice, honey," and then a change of subject. Back then, I told myself it didn't matter. I was proud of my accomplishments, even if they didn't shine as brightly in my parents' eyes. But favoritism has a way of seeping into everything, and over the years, the pattern became impossible to ignore. As adults, Derek built a thriving real estate business, bought a gorgeous waterfront home, and filled his life with expensive hobbies, sailing trips, wine tastings, luxury getaways. He had no kids, no major responsibilities outside of work, and a freedom I sometimes envied. My parents adored him for it. They dropped everything to attend his events, from open house celebrations for new listings to casual backyard parties. They'd travel across states to help him with a kitchen renovation, but suddenly have other commitments when I needed someone to watch the kids during finals week. When I once asked my mom why the imbalance was so obvious, she didn't deny it. "Your brother is just more fun to be around," she told me with a shrug. "You're always so serious, always busy with your responsibilities." The words stuck with me, not just because they hurt, but because, see, they told me exactly how my efforts were perceived. Responsibility wasn't something to admire. It was something that made me less appealing. Over the years, I learned to lower my expectations. I didn't ask for much from my parents because I knew Derek's needs or wants would always come first. But I never stopped hoping that one day there'd be a moment where they'd show up for me the way they did for him. That hope was one of the reasons I dreamed of my graduation. It wasn't just about the degree. It was about finally having an occasion so significant, so hard-earned, that it couldn't be brushed aside. I thought maybe, just maybe, it would break the pattern. But Derek had a way of turning any spotlight into his own. A few weeks before graduation, I got a call from him. It was casual, almost careless, like he was checking in out of obligation. After a few polite questions about my studies, he dropped it on me. "By the way, I'm throwing a massive barbecue at my place on May 15th. Just finished my new outdoor kitchen and I want to break it in. You guys should come. The kids would love the pool." I froze. "Derek, that's my graduation day." There was a pause, then a flat, "Oh, right, I forgot about that." I asked if he could move it. He didn't even pretend to consider it. "Not really." Already invited about 30 people, including clients who are only in town that weekend. "But hey, when does your ceremony end? Maybe you can stop by afterward." The dismissal hit me like a slap. 5 years of work, 5 years of sacrifice. And in his mind, it was just a graduation, something I could squeeze in before showing up to his party. And then came the blow that confirmed everything I'd feared. Mom and Dad are coming to my barbecue. They already confirmed. They're bringing Aunt Susan and Uncle Joe. Haven't seen them in years. I could feel the heat rising in my face. "You told Mo, Em and Dad about your barbecue before checking with me about the date? Even though you knew my graduation was coming up." "I didn't realize it was such a big deal," he said defensively. "You're 35, not 22. It's not like this is your first rodeo." I ended the call shaking with anger. I immediately phoned my mother, hoping she'd see reason, but she sounded almost apologetic on Derek's behalf. "Oh dear, what bad timing. Can't you both reschedule?" "No, Mom. The university doesn't reschedule commencement for individuals. This has been planned for a year. I told you about it 6 months ago." She sighed. "Well, it's just so difficult. Your aunt and uncle will be here, and your father loves Derek's barbecues. Can't we come to both?" Her tone made it clear she didn't see the impossibility of that. She didn't see why it mattered. That conversation cemented something I had known deep down for years. In this family, Derek's events would always be can't miss, and mine would always be optional. And yet, I clung to one last lifeline of comfort: Nathan and the kids. As long as they were there, I could survive my parents' absence. As long as my husband and children showed up for me, I could hold my head high on that stage. At least that's what I thought. Once I accepted that my parents and Derek wouldn't be at my graduation, I shifted my focus. I told myself it was fine. Hurtful, but fine. Because Nathan and the kids would still be there. That was what mattered most. 6 months before the ceremony, I started planning every detail. The university sent out an email with the commencement schedule, ticket allocations, and guest seating guidelines. Graduates were allowed 6 tickets each, and I immediately claimed the maximum. 1 for Nathan, 1 for Ethan, 1 for Sophia, 1 for my mom, 1 for my dad, and 1 for my sister Melissa, who lived in Phoenix. I called my parents first, out of habit more than hope. My mother's voice was polite but non-committal. "We'll try our best to make it." "Weedy?" she said, which I already knew was code for don't count on it. Still, I wrote their names down next to the tickets. Then I called Melissa. Unlike our parents, she didn't hesitate. "I'm so proud of you, sis," she said. "Working full-time, raising kids, and getting your master's degree. You're superwoman. I'll book my flight next week." Hearing that made my chest swell. At least someone in my family understood what this meant. With the guest list set, I turned my attention to the celebration. I researched restaurants near the university and found a cozy, highly rated Italian spot called Bissimo. The private dining room could accommodate our party of 8. It wasn't cheap, nearly $300 for the reservation alone, but this was a once-in-a-lifetime moment. I put down the deposit without hesitation. I even booked a hotel room for my parents at the downtown Marriott, using the points I'd accumulated from business trips. The thought of them being comfortable, well-fed, and rested for the ceremony gave me a small flicker of hope that maybe they'd come after all. 2 months before the big day, I treated myself to something rare, a brand new dress. It was a deep navy sheath with delicate lace at the sleeves, professional enough for under the gown, but elegant enough for the dinner afterward. When I tried it on at home, Sophia looked up at me with wide eyes. "You look pretty," she said, "like when you and Dad got married in those pictures." Her comment caught me off guard. I realized I couldn't remember the last time I dressed up for anything that wasn't work-related. Somewhere in the grind of balancing motherhood, a demanding job, and grad school, I'd lost the luxury of caring about my appearance. This day felt like an excuse to reclaim a little of that part of me. I scheduled hair, makeup, and a manicure for the morning of the ceremony. It felt indulgent, but I wanted to look and feel my best, not just for the photos, but for myself. By this point, everything was in place. The tickets were accounted for, the dinner was booked, my outfit was ready. Even Nathan seemed on board, reassuring me more than once that nothing could keep him and the kids from being there. "I want everyone in that audience," I told him 6 months before the ceremony. "You, the kids, my parents, even Melissa. This is a big day for all of us." He had nodded and squeezed my hand. "Of course, babe. We wouldn't miss it for the world." I believed him. In my mind, I could already see it. Ethan reluctantly putting on a button-up shirt, Sophia clutching a bouquet of flowers, Nathan snapping photos as I crossed the stage. After the ceremony, we'd head to Bissimo, order too much food, and raise a glass to everything we'd been through. I didn't know that all of this, the dress, the dinner, the hotel room, the plans, would become nothing more than reminders of a celebration that never happened. 3 weeks before graduation, the first real crack in my plans appeared, though at the time, I didn't realize just how wide it would split. Derek called me out of the blue. He never called regularly. Our conversations were usually short, polite check-ins prompted by some holiday or family obligation. But this time, he was unusually chatty, asking perfunctory questions about work, the kids, my studies. I was halfway through telling him about my final research project when he cut in. "By the way," he said, "I'm throwing a massive barbecue on May 15th. Just installed a new outdoor kitchen and I want to break it in. You guys should come. The kids would love the pool." I felt my stomach drop. "Derek, that's my graduation day." There was a pause, long enough for me to know exactly what was coming. "Oh, right, I forgot about that," he said casually, like he'd misplaced his keys, not dismissed one of the biggest milestones of my life. I took a breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can you change your barbecue to another weekend?" "Not really," he said, as if the idea were absurd. "Already invited like 30 people, including clients who are only in town that weekend. It's kind of locked in." "It's my graduation, Derek," I pressed. "I've been working toward this for 5 years. I want my family there." He gave a little laugh. "When does your ceremony end? Maybe you can swing by afterward." That was when the heat started rising in my chest. "The ceremony's at 2 and probably won't end until 5. Then we have dinner reservations. But that's not the point. You're my brother. You're supposed to be there." "Come on, Alicia," he said, in that dismissive tone I'd known since childhood. "It's just a graduation. You already had one for your bachelor's. This is just a piece of paper saying you took some extra classes. 5 years of sleepless nights, of missed weekends, of choosing textbooks over movie nights with my kids, reduced to some extra classes." My mind scrambled for words that weren't purely profanity. And then, the kicker. Mom and Dad are coming to my barbecue. They already confirmed, And they're bringing Aunt Susan and Uncle Joe. They're visiting from Florida. You know how rare it is we see them." I gripped the phone tighter, my pulse hammering in my ears. "You told Mom and Dad about your barbecue before checking with me about the date? Even though you knew my graduation was coming up? I didn't realize it was such a big deal," he said defensively. "You're 35, not 22. It's not like this is your first rodeo." We argued for another 10 minutes, him refusing to change the date, me refusing to back down. By the time I hung up, my hands were shaking and my throat ached from holding back tears. I immediately called my mother, clinging to the hope that she'd see reason. "Mom, Derek scheduled a barbecue on my graduation day. You can't go to that instead." "Oh dear, what bad timing," she said in a tone that made it clear she didn't see it as a big problem. "Can't you both reschedule?" "No, Mom, the university doesn't move commencement ceremonies for individuals. This has been set for a year. I told you about it 6 months ago." She sighed, as if I were the one making things difficult. "Well, it's just so hard. Your aunt and uncle will be here, and your father loves Derek's barbecues. Can't we come to both?" The logistics alone made that impossible. Different parts of town, overlapping times. But what hurt more was the casualness in her voice, the way she spoke as if the two events were equally important, interchangeable even. When I insisted again, she shifted the blame to me. "Alicia, you're being a little selfish. It's just a ceremony." The same words Derek had used. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and told Nathan everything. I expected outrage on my behalf, maybe even some gallows humor about my family's predictable favoritism. Instead, he just shook his head slowly. "Your family's always been like this," he said. "But hey, you'll still have us there cheering you on. Me and the kids will be your fan club. That's what really matters, right?" It did calm me a little. I thought he was right. My parents had made their choice. Derek had made his, but I could still have my husband and my children by my side. I looked him in the eye. "Promise me you three will be there no matter what." He squeezed my hand. Nothing could keep us away. And in that moment, I believed him. 3 days before graduation, I was still holding on to Nathan's promise like a lifeline. The tickets were in an envelope by the front door. My dress hung ready in the closet. The dinner reservation was confirmed. I was trying to ignore the ache of my parents' absence, focusing instead on the idea that Nathan and the kids would be in the audience, cheering for me. The night before the ceremony, I was cooking pasta for dinner when my phone rang. It was my mother. I answered without much enthusiasm, expecting small talk or some vague half-apology for missing the event. Instead, she said something that made me nearly drop the pot of boiling water. "Alicia, I just wanted to check if the kids are still coming to Derek's tomorrow. He's setting up games for them and has Sophia and Ethan on his list." I gripped the phone tighter. "What? No, Mom, the kids are coming to my graduation with Nathan." She sounded genuinely confused. "Oh, well, Derek said Nathan mentioned bringing them to the barbecue. There'll be several families there with children their age, and Derek even hired a lifeguard for the pool. They'd have much more fun than sitting through a long ceremony." I turned toward Nathan, who was chopping vegetables at the counter, suddenly very focused on his cutting board. "Mom, I need to go," I said, my voice flat, and hung up. The kitchen felt smaller, tighter. "Nathan," I started, "why does my mother think you and the kids are going to Derek's barbecue tomorrow?" He didn't look up. I might have mentioned to Derek that the kids were asking about the party. They heard about the pool and the games from their cousins. "And you told him you were bringing them, without talking to me first?" Nathan finally met my eyes. His expression was a strange mix of guilt and defensiveness. "Alicia, be reasonable. The ceremony's going to be 3 hours of sitting quietly while hundreds of names are read. The kids will be bored out of their minds." I stared at him, disbelief flooding in. "So instead of teaching them about supporting family and celebrating hard work, you're teaching them that fun always comes first?" He sighed. "Of course I think your achievement is important, but the kids really want to go to the barbecue. Ethan's been talking non-stop about swimming with his cousins, and Sophia found out her friend from soccer will be there. Derek invited her La family." I could feel my voice rising despite trying to stay calm. So what are you saying? That you want to take our children to a barbecue instead of watching their mother graduate with honors? Can't we compromise? He asked, his tone irritatingly even. Maybe I take the kids to the barbecue and we meet you at the restaurant afterward, or I could come to the ceremony alone and drop them off at Derek's after. I stared at him. Do you hear yourself? This isn't a business negotiation. This is one of the most important days of my life. I've sacrificed years for this degree, and you think it's negotiable whether my own children are there? You're being dramatic, he muttered. The words landed like a slap. They were almost identical to what Derek had said. It's just a graduation. I took a step toward him. 5 years, Nathan. 5 years of missing bedtimes, studying until 2 a.m, using vacation days for exams instead of trips. 5 years of you complaining about my absence, of the kids feeling neglected, of me drowning in guilt on top of exhaustion. And now, when it's finally over, when I want just 1 day of recognition, you're too busy worrying about whether they'll be entertained. The kids should be able to decide for themselves, he shot back. They're 14 and 11. Of course they'd choose a pool party over a graduation ceremony. That's exactly why parents make decisions based on values, I said, my voice shaking, not on what's more fun in the moment. The argument escalated quickly. The kids came downstairs, drawn by our raised voices. Ethan rolled his eyes, muttering that only nerds cared about graduations. Sophia looked like she was on the verge of tears, asking why I wanted to ruin their fun. By the time we stopped arguing, I felt wrung out. I didn't eat dinner. Nathan slept on the couch, something that rarely happened in our marriage. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my graduation outfit hanging in the corner like some mocking reminder of what tomorrow was supposed to be. I had imagined this day so many times, always with my famils. There. Now I knew deep down that wasn't going to happen. The next morning confirmed it. I woke up to a silent house. No kids, no clatter of breakfast, no Nathan. On the kitchen counter sat a note in his handwriting. Took the kids to Derek's early to help set up. We'll try to make it back for your ceremony. Congratulations, Nathan. It felt like a punch to the gut. Not even a goodbye. Not even a we love you. Just a casual afterthought scrawled in ink. I stood there for a long time, staring at the note, the coffee maker humming in the background. In that moment, the day shifted for me. Graduation was no longer about celebration. It was about survival. The morning of my graduation should have been filled with excited chaos. Nathan double-checking the tickets, the kids complaining about dressing up, me hurrying everyone out the door so we wouldn't be late. Instead, I stood in a quiet kitchen, holding a lukewarm cup of coffee, staring at the note Nathan had left behind. The house felt hollow, like it had already decided this wasn't my day. No chatter from Sophia, no sarcastic remarks from Ethan, no partner to give me a last hug before I walked into the culmination of 5 years of sacrifice. I forced myself into motion. Hair appointment at 10, makeup at 11. I'd already paid for them, and there was no way I was letting Nathan's decision ruin everything. The stylist tried to make conversation, but I didn't have it in me. She must have sensed it, because after a few polite attempts, she worked in silence, her hands quick and efficient. The makeup artist did her best to hide the damage from my sleepless night. Puffy eyes, pale skin, the faint crease between my brows from holding back tears. By the time she was done, my reflection looked polished, almost celebratory, but it felt like a mask, hiding a storm I couldn't let anyone else see. Back home, I slipped into my navy dress, zipped up my gown, and adjusted the cap until it sat just right. I took a selfie in the hallway mirror. My smile was thin but passable. I posted it online with a short caption about achieving goals, tagging my family out of habit, or maybe out of spite. The comments started rolling in almost immediately. Coworkers, high school friends, distant relatives, all congratulating me, all saying how proud they were. Everyone except the people who mattered most. Before leaving, I texted Nathan, "Heading to the ceremony now, are you still planning to come?" 3 dots appeared, then vanished, then reappeared. Finally, Ethan took a bad fall while running around the pool. Nothing serious, but lots of tears. Might be late. Save us seats if you can. Seats didn't work like that at graduation. Family seating was general admission. Graduates had assigned spots by name. Nathan knew this. He'd read the packet I'd left on the counter weeks ago. The message felt less like an update and more like an excuse. The drive to campus was a blur. I parked in the crowded garage, diploma case still empty but already feeling like a weight in my hands. Inside the auditorium, the air buzzed with excitement. Students hugged their families, posed for photos, accepted flowers and gifts. I kept my head down and found my place in the alphabetical lineup. As we filed into the main hall to the sound of pomp and circumstance, I let myself glance at the audience, scanning for even a glimpse of Nathan or the kids. Nothing. Just strangers' faces and other families' joy. The ceremony began with speeches from the president, the dean, and a successful alum who spoke about perseverance. The words hit me differently than they probably did for most, because I had lived them in every sense. The long nights, the missed moments, the relentless pressure. Perseverance wasn't an abstract concept to me. When it was finally my department's turn, I stood and walked toward the stage, heart thudding. In those few seconds, I made a decision. If no one else was going to cheer for me, I'd cheer for myself. Alicia Marie Williams, Master of Business Administration with honors. I walked across that stage with my head high, shook the dean's hand, and accepted my diploma case. The applause was polite, the same as everyone else's. No whistles, no shouts of my name. But I didn't stumble. I didn't falter. Back in my seat, a strange calm settled over me. The hurt was still there, sharp and deep, but it had crystallized into something harder, resolve. I didn't know yet what I'd do with it, but I knew I would no longer beg for recognition from people who refused to give it. When the ceremony ended, graduates poured out onto the lawn for cap tossing and photos. I lingered at the edge, watching other families reunite, hug, and take pictures together. I posed for a couple of shots with classmates, but it felt hollow, like I was standing in someone else's celebration. I checked my phone, still nothing from Nathan. Out of habit, I opened social media, and there it was, a photo Derek had posted just 30 minutes earlier. He was smiling around a fire pit, holding a marshmallow on a stick. My parents were beside him, laughing. Nathan stood behind them, grinning, with Sophia and Ethan roasting marshmallows. While I was walking across the stage, they were at the barbecue. Something inside me cracked wide open. I found a quiet spot behind the science building, far from the crowds, and let the tears come. They weren't delicate movie scene tears. They were raw, gasping sobs that left my makeup streaked and my chest aching. When I finally caught my breath, I pulled out my phone to cancel the dinner reservation. There was no point in going now. But before I could dial, a new text appeared from Nathan. "We need to talk urgently." Underneath it, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. 45 missed calls from him, all within the past hour. My first thought was Ethan. Had his fall been worse than Nathan let on? Had something happened to one of the kids or to my parents? I didn't waste another second. I hit call. He picked up immediately, his voice high and panicked. "Alicia, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for over an hour." "What happened? Is everyone okay?" I asked, already walking fast toward the parking garage. "It's Ethan," Nathan said in a rush. He was climbing on that new water slide Derek installed, showing off for his cousins, and he fell. We're at Memorial Hospital. The doctor thinks his arm is broken. I didn't even think. "I'll be right there." I didn't remember much of the walk back to my car, just the pounding of my heels against the pavement and the way my gown twisted awkwardly around my legs as I hurried. My cap felt heavy on my head, my tassel swinging with each step like it was mocking me. The parking garage was stifling, filled with the echo of engines starting and families chatting excitedly about post-graduation dinners. I slid into the driver's seat, tossed my cap into the back, and put the gown in a heap on the passenger side. My hands were shaking so badly I fumbled the keys twice before the engine turned over. Memorial Hospital was only 15 minutes from campus, but each red light felt like an eternity. I kept glancing at my phone on the passenger seat, half hoping for a follow-up text from Nathan telling me Ethan was fine, half dreading a call with worse news. When I finally pulled into the emergency lot, I barely registered where I parked. Inside, the air smelled of antiseptic, and the low hum of voices filled the space. I hurried to the reception desk and gave Ethan's name. The clerk tapped a few keys and told me, "Bay 7, down the hall to the left." I pushed the curtain aside and froze. Ethan lay on the bed, his right arm in a temporary splint. His cheeks were streaked with dried tears, but he looked calmer than I expected. Nathan stood at his side. Sophia was perched on a chair next to the bed, swinging her feet. My parents were there too, and Derek leaning casually against the counter, chatting with a doctor. All of them turned when I stepped in. Relief flickered across Nathan's face. My mother gave me a tight smile. Derek lifted his hand in a casual wave, like we were at a backyard gathering and I'd just arrived late. "Mom," Ethan said, his voice small and a little shaky. "You came." That pulled me forward instantly, maternal instinct pushing aside everything else. I went straight to his side, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. "Of course I came, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" The doctor, a man with kind eyes and a clipboard in hand, stepped forward. "Your son has a simple fracture of the radius. Painful, but straightforward. We'll get him into a cast, and he should heal fully in about 6 weeks." Relief washed over me. It wasn't life-threatening. It wasn't permanent. Still, my mother's voice cut into the moment. "He was very brave," she said, patting Ethan's leg. "Barely cried after the initial shock." I gave her a tight nod but didn't respond. The fact that they could all be gathered here, rallying around my son, when none of them could manage to show up for my graduation, felt like salt in a wound. Then Derek stepped closer. "Thank God you got here, sis. The little man's been asking for you non-stop." I looked at him, hearing the easy familiarity in his tone, the casualness of it all, as though the day hadn't already been gutted by their absence. Something inside me snapped. "Thank God I got here," I repeated quietly, as opposed to where I was before, graduating, alone, while my entire family enjoyed a barbecue. The space went still. Nathan shot me a warning look, silently pleading with me not to do this. But 5 years of frustration and exhaustion had been building in me, and they weren't going to be swallowed down this time. I just spent the most important day of my professional life completely alone, I said, my voice trembling but clear. No husband, no children, no parents, not even a text message of congratulations, because a barbecue and a pool party were more important than 5 years of sacrifice and hard work. "Alicia," my father began, his voice trying for calm. "When would be a better time, Dad?" I cut in. "When I'm back to being invisible? When I'm back to putting everyone else first while none of you can spare a single afternoon for me?" My mother looked genuinely confused. "Honey, we didn't realize it meant this much to you. It's just a ceremony." "Just a ceremony?" I repeated, my voice breaking. "Just like it's just a degree, just an accomplishment, just my life." Derek cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "Look, what matters now is that Ethan's okay. This was an emergency." "And if there hadn't been an emergency?" I asked, locking eyes with him. "Would any of you have regretted missing my graduation? Would you have even thought about me at all today?" The silence that followed was all the answer I needed. Nathan put a hand on my arm. "Alicia, you have every right to be upset, but Ethan needs calm right now. We can talk later." He was right about one thing. My son didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of this. I took a breath and forced myself to shift gears. "You're right," I said, turning back to Ethan. "Let's focus on you right now, sweetheart." The nurse arrived to take him to casting, and I volunteered to go with him. As we walked down the hall, Ethan leaned slightly against me. "I'm sorry I missed your graduation, Mom. I really wanted to go to the party, and Dad said it would be okay." "It's not your fault," I told him. "Adults made those decisions, not you." "But you're sad," he said quietly. "Yes," I admitted. "I am sad." but I'm also very proud of myself. And I hope someday you'll understand why today was important. He nodded solemnly. I'm proud of you too, Mom, even if I didn't see you get your diploma thing. That simple sentence meant more to me than anything else I'd heard all day. When Ethan's cast was finally secure, bright blue and covered in the first few signatures from the hospital staff, we made our way back toward Bay 7. I was still holding his discharge papers, my mind half on what needed to be done next and half on the simmering tension waiting for me behind that curtain. I pulled the divider back and stepped inside, expecting the same group I'd left earlier, but only Nathan remained. Sophia, my parents, and Derek were gone. They went to get coffee in the cafeteria, Nathan explained. Sophia's with them. Apparently the vending machines are more interesting than hospital waiting rooms. I nodded, still in that controlled, mother mode calm I'd been clinging to. Doctor says we can take him home. We just need to pick up the prescription for pain meds. Nathan glanced down at the pharmacy bag in his hands. I've already got it. Then, more tentatively, Alicia, about today? Not now, I cut him off. Not in front of Ethan. Before he could respond, my phone rang. It was Linda, my coworker, the one person outside my family I had explicitly invited to the graduation, just in case no one else could make it. Alicia, where are you? She asked. I've been looking for you. I thought we were meeting by the fountain after the ceremony. I'm so sorry, I said, glancing at Ethan. I'm at Memorial Hospital. Ethan had an accident, broke his arm. Oh my God, is he okay? Yeah, he's fine. We're just wrapping up here. Do you need anything? Food? Someone to pick up prescriptions? Company? Her offers were so simple, so genuine, and they cut right through me. Actually, would you mind coming by later? I could use a friend right now. Of course, I'll bring dinner. Text me your address. When I hung up, I noticed Nathan watching me, his brow furrowed. Who was that? Linda from work, I said evenly. She came to my graduation since no one else did. She's bringing dinner later. Before he could respond, the rest of my family returned. My parents carrying coffee cups, Derek with a hospital muffin in hand, Sophia trailing behind them looking vaguely bored. My mother went straight to Ethan, fussing over his cast. My father asked Nathan about follow-up appointments. Derek hung back, for once quieter than usual. We're taking Ethan home, I announced. He needs rest. We'll come with you, my mother offered immediately. You'll need help getting him settled and sorting dinner. I shook my head. No, Linda's bringing dinner. I can manage my own son. The silence that followed was sharp. My father's brows knitted together. But we came all this way. We were planning to stay until tomorrow. You can go back to Derek's, I said coolly. I'm sure the barbecue's still going. Derek opened his mouth, but something in my expression must have stopped him. My mother looked hurt, but I couldn't bring myself to soften it for her this time. We parted in the parking lot with awkward nods and mumbled, "Call us tomorrow. Promises." Nathan drove our car while I sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, Ethan and Sophia quiet in the back. At home, I helped Ethan settle onto the couch, propping his arm with pillows and putting on his favorite show. Sophia slipped upstairs without a word. Nathan hovered near the kitchen, clearly waiting for me to engage. I'm going to change, I said, gesturing to the graduation dress I was still wearing. Then we need to talk. Upstairs, I stripped off the dress, something that should have been a symbol of triumph, but now felt like a relic from a day that never happened. I put on comfortable clothes, scrubbed my smeared makeup away, and stared at myself in the mirror for a long moment. I didn't see celebration, the parfaits. I saw exhaustion and something harder, resolve. When I came back downstairs, Nathan was unpacking the pharmacy bag. He looked up, hesitant. Alicia, I know you're angry. Angry doesn't begin to cover it, I said, keeping my voice low so the kids wouldn't hear. I feel betrayed, Nathan, by you most of all. He set the bag down. I made a mistake. I thought the kids would have more fun at the barbecue. I didn't realize the ceremony meant this much to you. I stared at him. How could you not realize? I've been talking about it for months. I asked you, explicitly, to promise you'd be there. all of you." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "When Derek invited us, the kids got so excited. It seemed like a harmless compromise at the time." "A compromise implies both parties agree," I said sharply. "You made a unilateral decision to prioritize fun over supporting me." "You're right," he admitted. "I screwed up badly. But does one mistake erase 12 years of marriage? 5 years of me supporting you through your degree?" "Supporting me?" My voice rose despite myself. "You complained constantly about my absence. You took the kids to events without even asking if I could come, and on the one day I needed you to show up, you chose my brother's party instead." "That's not fair," he said. "I've been juggling work and childcare while you were in class 3 nights a week. I've been supportive in ways you don't even see. And I've been working full-time while studying nights and weekends for 5 years," I shot back. "We've both made sacrifices. The difference is, I would never have missed an important milestone in your life." He didn't respond. The truth of that hung heavy in the air. "What do you want me to do?" he asked finally. "How do I fix this?" "I don't know if you can fix it right now," I said quietly. "I need time to think about whether I can trust you to value me and my accomplishments." His voice wavered. "Are you saying you want a separation?" "No. I'm saying I need space. I'm going to stay at the hotel I booked for my parents, just for a week. Alicia, be reasonable. Ethan just broke his arm. He needs his mother. He has a father who apparently is perfectly capable of making decisions without me," I said. "He'll be fine for a few days with you in charge. I'll check on him daily." He opened his mouth, but the doorbell rang. Linda. She walked in carrying takeout bags and a wrapped gift. "We're so proud of you," she said, hugging me tight. Her words, simple, heartfelt, were exactly what I'd wanted from my family all along. And in that moment, I knew I was leaving the next morning. The next morning, I packed a small suitcase. Just the essentials: clothes for a week, toiletries, my laptop, and the navy dress I couldn't quite bring myself to leave behind, even though it now felt like a costume from someone else's story. I placed my diploma case gently on top, unopened since the ceremony. The irony wasn't lost on me as I drove downtown to the Marriott. The room I was checking into was the same one I had booked for my parents, thinking they'd be traveling to see me graduate. Now, instead of them, it was me seeking refuge in it. When I first closed the door behind me, the silence felt almost unnatural. No kids bickering, no phone buzzing with demands, no one asking what's for dinner. Just stillness. For a few minutes, I stood in the middle of the room, unsure what to do with it. Then slowly, I started to breathe. The first day, I let myself do nothing. I stayed in the oversized hotel robe, ordered room service, and watched mindless TV. I answered a few apologetic texts from Nathan, short, polite replies, and skimmed over the longer, guilt-laden messages from my parents. Derek sent flowers with a card that read, "Sorry for the bad timing. Proud of you." I left them on the desk, unopened. On the second day, I visited Ethan after school. He was curled up on the couch with his cast propped on a pillow, watching cartoons. Brought him a small Lego set he could manage with one hand. He grinned when he saw me, and I stayed just long enough to help him open the box, build a few pieces, and remind him I'd see him again tomorrow. Sophia met me for lunch at her school midweek. Over sandwiches, I reassured her that sometimes adults need a little space, and that it didn't mean I loved her or Ethan any less. She nodded, chewing thoughtfully, and then asked, "Is this because we didn't come to your graduation?" I considered lying, but decided against it. "Partly," I said. "I was very hurt by that, but it's also about me needing to figure out what I want going forward." Her eyes softened in understanding that seemed far beyond her 11 years. "Okay," she said simply. During the quiet hours in the hotel, I reflected, not just on graduation day, but on the past 5 years. I thought about the countless sacrifices I'd made for my family and how rarely they seemed to notice unless it directly benefited them. I thought about how often I'd been the responsible one, the default problem solver, the person who made it possible for everyone else to pursue what they wanted without ever asking for much in return. Somewhere along the way, I'd internalized the idea that my needs came last, that if I just worked harder, proved myself more, they would see me, value me, celebrate me. Graduation had been the test of that belief, and it had failed spectacularly. Midweek, I had a meeting with my boss, who confirmed the promotion to senior analyst was mine. The raise was substantial, enough to make a real difference at home. But what struck me most was her praise. You've worked incredibly hard for this, and you deserve every bit of it. That simple recognition was worth more than the title itself. By Thursday, Nathan's texts had shifted from defensive explanations to increasingly desperate pleas. I miss you. The kids miss you. Can we talk? My parents left a tearful voicemail, admitting they'd been thoughtless and asking to start fresh. Derek sent another text, this one longer, saying he hadn't realized how hurtful his scheduling had been and that he wanted to make it right. I wasn't ready to answer any of them fully. I needed the week to belong to me. I went for long walks in the mornings, sat by the waterfront with a coffee, and let myself imagine what life could look like if I stopped accepting scraps of attention and called them love. I pictured what it would mean to set boundaries, not to punish, but to protect my own dignity. By the time Saturday rolled around, I felt different, lighter somehow, clearer. I wasn't returning home to pretend nothing had happened. I was returning with the intention of reshaping how my relationships worked, even if that meant uncomfortable conversations and resistance. When I packed my suitcase again, I didn't feel the pang of guilt I'd expected. Instead, I felt a quiet sense of resolve. A week earlier, I had walked across a graduation stage alone, holding a diploma in my hands and wondering if it meant anything without the people I loved there to see it. Now I knew the truth. My degree meant exactly as much as I decided it did. Their absence hadn't diminished it. It had simply revealed who valued me and who didn't. And that clarity, as painful as it had been to earn, was going to change everything. I drove home the following Sunday with the hotel windows cracked just enough to let in the early spring air. The week away had stripped away the constant background noise of family life and left me with something I hadn't realized I'd been missing: clarity. When I pulled into the driveway, Nathan was sitting on the porch. He stood, and as I got out of the car, offering a tentative smile. He didn't rush toward me, maybe sensing I wasn't ready for that, but he did take my suitcase from the trunk without a word. Inside, the house was spotless. I later learned he'd hired a cleaning service, a gesture that was as much an acknowledgement as it was an attempt at peace. The kids were still at school, so Nathan and I sat at the kitchen table, our old stage for homework sessions and late-night talks, ready to finally address the chasm between us. "I've been thinking a lot," he started, his tone softer than it had been in months, "about how I've taken you for granted, about how I failed to support you when it mattered most." I nodded slowly. "I've been thinking too, about what I need from this marriage going forward." "Tell me," he said, and for once I felt like he meant it without defensiveness. "I need respect for my accomplishments, not just lip service. I need a partner who values my goals as much as his own, and I can't be the default parent, the default housekeeper, the one whose needs always come last." He didn't interrupt. He didn't roll his eyes. He just listened. "You're right," he said finally. "I've been putting you last while complaining about your absence. That's unfair, and it's hypocritical." We talked for hours about his insecurities when I advanced academically, about my resentment for carrying the mental load of family management while studying, about how both of us had been running on fumes for years without realizing it. By the time the kids got home, we'd already agreed on some practical changes: splitting parenting duties more evenly, hiring a cleaner regularly, and having monthly check-ins about each other's needs. That evening, we had a family meeting. Ethan sat at the table with his cast covered in colorful signatures, Sophia leaning her elbows on the table. Nathan and I explained that we had been through a rough patch, We were working to be a stronger family. "Does this mean you're staying, Mom?" Sophia asked quietly. "Yes," I said, "but it also means things will be different. I'm starting a new position at work, and everyone in this family will contribute more at home." Ethan volunteered to mow the lawn once his arm healed. Sophia offered to take over laundry sorting. It wasn't about the chores themselves, it was about them seeing that we function best when we share the load. Over the next few days, I began the harder part, facing my parents and Derek. I invited them over separately, not wanting the conversations to turn into a family pile-on. My parents arrived first, carrying a gift bag and wearing the expressions of people hoping to smooth things over quickly. Inside the bag was a card with a substantial check. "I can't take this," I told them gently but firmly, handing it back. "This isn't about money. It's about recognizing a pattern that's been here my whole life. Derek's events always take priority. His achievements are celebrated, mine are minimized." My father looked genuinely surprised. "We didn't know you felt that way." "That's part of the problem," I said. "You never asked. You never noticed. I'm not asking you to rewrite the past, but going forward, I won't accept being treated as an afterthought." The conversation was uncomfortable. My mother teared up, insisting they never meant to hurt me. My father promised they'd be more mindful. I didn't take their words as instant transformation, but it was a start. When Derek came over, he was uncharacteristically subdued. Without our parents there to buffer him, his usual bravado was gone. "I never meant to overshadow you," he began. I've always been used to planning things and people showing up. I didn't think about how my barbecue would affect you." "Intent doesn't erase impact," I told him. "Your party could have been any other weekend. You knew my graduation was coming up, and you still chose that day." To his cray. He didn't argue. "You're right, I've been selfish. I've gotten used to being the center of attention in this family." We left it there, an agreement to do better without pretending the damage hadn't been done. In the weeks that followed, the changes were small but real. Nathan followed through on sharing household duties. The kids asked more about my work. My parents called to check in without it being prompted by a holiday or Derek's latest event. And then, a month after graduation, Derek did something I didn't expect. He hosted a small gathering just for me. He invited close friends, colleagues, and even my boss. There was a cake decorated with my university's colors, and he gave a short speech about my determination and intelligence. My parents were there, bringing a framed photo of me in my cap and gown, taken by the university photographer they'd contacted afterward. It didn't erase what had happened, but it did mark a shift. For the first time in a long time, I felt like my family wasn't just tolerating my accomplishments, they were celebrating them. A few weeks after Derek's small party, I found myself alone in my new office at work. My framed diploma hung on the wall behind me, the embossed lettering catching the afternoon light. The leather portfolio Linda had given me sat on the corner of my desk, filled with notes for upcoming projects in my new senior analyst role. It struck me how different this office felt from my home. The quiet here wasn't born from absence or avoidance. It was the quiet of focus, of space I'd earned. I thought about how much had changed since graduation day. Ethan's cast was almost ready to come off, and he'd already made good on his promise to help more at home. Sophia had taken ownership of her laundry duties and even surprised me by making dinner one night with Nathan's help. Nathan himself had been making a visible effort, not just with chores, but in showing up for me in ways he hadn't before. My parents had called twice in the last week just to ask how I was doing. They weren't grand gestures, but they were consistent, small acknowledgments that they were trying to shift the pattern we'd lived with for decades. The biggest change, though, was in me. For years, I'd equated love with approval, and approval with sacrifice. I'd believed that if I gave enough, proved enough, achieved enough, the people closest to me would naturally give that energy back. Graduation day had shattered that belief, and the weeks since had forced me to rebuild it into something stronger. I'd learned that my worth didn't depend on the recognition of others. My degree, my career, my resilience, they were mine. whether anyone else celebrated them or not. The empty seats at my graduation had once felt like a symbol of rejection, but now I saw them differently. They were a turning point. The moment I realized I couldn't keep waiting for people to value me on their own terms. I had to set the terms. It wasn't about cutting people out or holding grudges. It was about boundaries, about being clear on what I would and wouldn't accept, about understanding that my life couldn't be built on the hope that others would change without being asked to. Sometimes the deepest wounds lead to the most significant growth. That's what this whole experience had been, a painful but necessary breaking point that forced change in every important relationship I had. A month after Derek's party, I stopped by his place to return a serving dish he'd sent home with me. We stood in his kitchen, chatting about work and the weather, and for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like we were competing for our parents' attention. He'd even mentioned my promotion to a couple of his friends, casually but proudly, as if it were second nature. At home, Nathan and I had made non-negotiable lists, times and events we would always prioritize for each other. My next big presentation at work was already on his calendar, and he'd taken the day off to be there. One evening, Sophia asked me if I would go back to school again, now that I'd finished my master's. I laughed and told her I might someday, but that I'd only do it if the family was ready to fully support it. She thought for a moment, then nodded. "We'd be there this time," she said. That simple statement made me realize that even though the road to this point had been messy and hurtful, something meaningful had shifted in the way my children saw me. They understood now, in a way they hadn't before, that my accomplishments mattered, not just for me, but for them too. As I locked my office door that evening and headed to the parking garage, I felt a lightness in my step I hadn't felt in years. I was no longer chasing recognition. I was building it into my life on my terms with people who chose to meet me there. The day I'd imagined for so long, graduation day, hadn't looked anything like I'd pictured. It had been lonelier, messier, and far more painful than I could have prepared for. But in the end, it gave me something even more valuable than the moment I'd dreamed of. It gave me the clarity to stop asking for permission to be valued. It gave me the courage to stand up for myself without fear of being abandoned. And it gave me the understanding that sometimes the celebration you truly need is the one you give yourself, because in the end, the most important person who needs to believe in your worth is you.